Good morning and welcome. I'm Lisa Rosencrans, Chair of the 121st Annual Meeting of the Jewish Federation of Chicago. We're so glad you could join us. It's often been said that JUF does more than feed the hungry. We also nourish those who hunger for community. This year, we were reminded of just how much that sense of community means. Throughout this past year, while much of everyday life was put on pause for the pandemic, our commitment to Jewish life and to one another only grew. We dug deep and found reserves of resilience we didn't know we had. And together, we met the intense challenges of a year unlike any other. Together, we delivered wide-ranging COVID relief throughout the community. Together, we rushed support to the State of Israel in a time of crisis and battled a frightening surge in anti-Semitism. And together, we still made it a priority to engage the next generations in Jewish life, community, and identity. I want to point out a few special features on your screens that will allow you to participate with us today. To the right of the live video window you are seeing us on now, you'll see a box marked with two tabs, one marked Q&A and the other polls. If you have any questions or comments about the work of the Jewish Federation, then please click on the Q&A tab and submit your question. Someone will follow up with you after the program. The polls tab will be explained later in the program. Then, if you scroll down, there's another box marked Chat. Please use the chat to communicate with other meeting participants and cheer on our award winners. Now, it's my pleasure to turn the meeting over to our board chair, Pam Sokol.
Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to call the 121st Annual Meeting of the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago to order. Will the Secretary, Peter Bensinger Jr., please read the minutes of the last annual meeting, unless I hear a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes.
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Passed. Today, the people you see on your screens have completed their board terms. We'd like to thank and acknowledge them for their dedicated service. We also want to say a special thank you to the people who you see on your screens who served on the Federation board for the past year by virtue of the leadership roles they held. Thank you. We are grateful for your leadership as well. At the April meeting of our Federation Board of Directors, a new slate of officers was elected for 2021-2022. These officers will assume the leadership of our Federation immediately following the adjournment of this 121st annual meeting. Wendy Berger, our 2021 nominating chair, will now give the report of the nominating committee.
I'm pleased to present the report of the nominating committee. I want to thank the members of the Jewish Federation Nominating Committee for putting so much thought and effort into selecting this outstanding slate of board nominees. According to our bylaws, officers were elected by the Board of Directors. Now it is our responsibility to elect a new Board of Directors for the upcoming year. The slate of nominees has been sent to all members of the Federation as provided in the bylaws and published with the official notice of this meeting. The nominating committee gave serious consideration to numerous candidates from throughout the community. In keeping with our bylaws, proxies were solicited from our membership and over 30 have been received. In addition to the proxies, we ask everyone here who is eligible to cast their vote today. Any donor of $25 or more to the JUF annual campaign is a member of the Federation in good standing and eligible to vote. These proxies are used in the election of our directors for our Federation board, as well as for the election of directors to all boards of our Federation's affiliate agencies and the executives of these agencies will receive official notification of the proxy results. You've heard the names of the slate of nominees unanimously submitted by the nominating committee. Since there were no nominations in opposition to this slate, we will dispense with the written ballot. I move to approve the election of the slate of nominees to the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago Board of Directors. Please look to the right of your screen to locate and select the Polls tab in the box next to the video window. Once the poll is opened, you will have 30 seconds to enter your response. All those in favor of the slate of nominees signify by submitting aye in the poll, and all opposed by nay. The votes have been tabulated, and all the nominees selected by the nominating committee have now been elected directors of the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Chicago. Thank you.
The annual Samuel A. Goldsmith Award honors extraordinary professionals under the age of 40 who have served our local Jewish community with distinction. This year demanded more dedication, skill, and creativity than ever from the communal professionals in our agencies. 4 of them, one from each of our affiliate agencies, truly excelled in their jobs this past year and performed in the spirit of Samuel Goldsmith by stepping up, leading by example, and with special dedication and commitment to their responsibilities. We will honor our 4 Samuel A. Goldsmith honorees throughout our program. They are Nora Bergman, Program Manager for Holocaust Community Services at CJE Senior Life. Kyle Coling, Assistant Director of Camp Shy at JCC Chicago. Leticia Cardozo, Assistant Director of Residential Supports for JCFS Chicago, and our first Goldsmith Award honoree, Thejal Patel, System Director of Inpatient Pharmacy and Respiratory Services for Sinai Chicago. Sinai Chicago was on the front lines of the pandemic, and Thejal played a key role in sourcing critical, scarce medications to treat the hospital's COVID-19 patients. She went to great lengths to ensure that Sinai had access to all emerging medications with FDA emergency use authorization and spent countless hours developing protocols that changed frequently as new information was released. Thejal also led the employee vaccination program and was instrumental in developing pop-up vaccination clinics across the community. Samuel Goldsmith's legacy included advocating for the poor and the sick. Thejal's work has always reflected those values, and never more so than during the pandemic.
I think it takes a village. I really do. And more than ever, this pandemic and everything, all of our work towards it last year and this year, it has taught me that. Our caregivers have come together to provide the best care that they can. The way we've kind of overcome some of the barriers, I think one of the things that we really looked at during the pandemic was there was a lot of data out there, especially with zip codes and which zip codes had high prevalence of COVID. And a lot of those zip codes were areas that we serve. And they were coupled with very low vaccination rates. And so with that, we were able to work with our community organizations, community partners, leaders, and say, how can we get vaccines to these vulnerable populations, and how can we help them? So at Sinai Chicago, we set up pop-up clinics on the weekends. We would work with various organizations and go to churches and high schools, gyms, and set up 500 doses to be given in that community. And we've taken that platform and are now going door to door and vaccinating individuals at their homes. I worked with our entire leadership team to say, let's purchase some critical care medications that we may need so that our patients have what they need if the time comes. So we started planning for this in January from the medication standpoint. And then as the months went on, sometime in July or August, we learned that Pfizer might be coming out with a vaccine. And so I started doing my research with what that entailed, found out that we needed a deep freezer that had capacity for a negative 70 degrees Celsius storage. And so I worked with our leadership team to say we need this, and tried to procure it as quickly as we could, because that was eventually going to be on shortage because everyone was going to need it. It was December 17th, 2020, and it's a date I will never forget. We turned our auditorium at Sinai into a mass vaccination clinic, and that was the date that we actually received our first vaccines. We received our vaccines at around 10 in the morning, and we were actually administering them by noon that same day. And when the caregivers came into the room to just get their vaccines, it was almost like a new sense of hope for them. Everybody was so joyous. Everybody was so happy. And it felt like the year's work, finally, there was a light at the end of the tunnel for everybody.
Congratulations, and thank you, Thejal. Our second Goldsmith Award honoree is Kyle Koling, Assistant Director of Camp Shy for JCC Chicago. Kyle was promoted to Assistant Director of JCC Chicago's Camp Shy just 2 months before the pandemic hit home. Renowned for creating meaningful relationships with campers and families, he didn't skip a beat. He quickly created a successful virtual staff and training program for teens throughout summer 2020. He launched the virtual college road trip in May 2020. A program Springboard is working to replicate nationally. He reignited Chi-Town Connection for teens year-round. And he supported Chi Family Getaway programming when camp was canceled last summer. Kyle's love of Jewish life and living is infectious, and his exceptional service during the pandemic enabled JCC to serve as many community members as possible during a challenging time.
Last year was very difficult. My favorite part of my job, I'm a people person. I like talking to people. I like meeting new people. I like interacting. And during the pandemic, it was much more difficult. I hire a lot of the staff and different things like that, and it was all virtual. And at first, I struggled with that until we started running some really amazing virtual programs at Chi, and you could really see and hear from the parents' feedback, all these different things, how much their kids were enjoying it. And although they don't want virtual, they don't want this, but they love the Chi things, and they love that they got to see their friends here. And that really made it all worth it. None of us ever saw or thought anything like this could happen, but it did. And it was difficult, especially those first few weeks and months. No one knew it. Everyone was making it up. No one knew exactly what they were doing. But I think for me, what really shined through is the will of people to keep going, to make things happen, to step up and overcome any challenges. And we all know that we could, but now we had to. And I think every single person from all walks of life, they stepped up, and that's what kept us going, and that's what brought us to this point. And so the entire Camp Shy team and all of our counselors and all the staff in the JCC and JUF, everyone stepped up to do what they had to do to make it happen, no matter how difficult it was, no matter how many challenges stood in their way. People made it happen. For me, that moment that I felt, I was in the right place, that this was the place that I was meant to be, was the first day of first session this summer. It was the first time we'd had campers in camp in 2 years for our 100th summer. A lot of talking, could this happen? How could we make it happen? And that moment that campers stepped off the bus and you could see their faces and they saw their friends for the first time in over a year, and just the excitement, the pure enjoyment, the energy, the smiles was amazing, and the it seemed like for many of these kids that they hadn't felt this way in so long, and they finally felt free of the pandemic. They were in this bubble of Camp Shy where they could be happy, and sure, there were masks and there was whatever, but they were at Camp Shy, they were together, and just kind of and seeing that, and seeing the counselors, interact with those campers and giving them everything they need and talking to them, and I think just for everyone in camp, it was a truly special moment. And for me, it just felt like, the campers were home, but I was home.
Thank you, Kyle. The annual Davis, Gidwitz, and Glasser Young Leadership Award honors young leaders who have demonstrated tremendous commitment to the Jewish community. It's a pleasure to announce this year's honorees are Hannah Bloom Hirschberg and Emily Pevnick. Hannah Bloom Hirschberg followed a unique leadership path at JUF. She became involved after participating in a mission to Ethiopia. For the better part of the decade since, she has lent JUF her considerable expertise in and passion for Jewish education. Hannah brings impressive credentials to the table. Professionally, she serves as a program manager for early childhood professional development at Jewish Theological Seminary's Jewish Early Childhood Education Leadership Institute. She taught for 10 years before pivoting to the professional development side of the field. An active member of JUF's Community Building and Jewish Continuity Commission since 2012, Hannah has played a leadership role in subcommittees surrounding key issues from day school education to youth with disabilities. In 2013, Hannah joined the Community Foundation for Jewish Education, now JUF's Education Department, where she was a thought leader in helping JUF grow programs, enhance resources, and deliver best practices in Jewish early childhood education, congregational education, and immersive teen Jewish experiences. In 2018, Hannah was recognized as one of JUF's 36 Under 36, and she went on to serve as chair of JUF's Good Deeds Day, as well as participating in the third cohort of JUF's Jewish Leaders Institute. In addition to her contributions to JUF, Hannah serves as a board member of Vanderbilt Hillel and Mishkan Chicago.
Good morning. Being able to speak with you today is an honor and a privilege I never expected. You see, neither my husband Gary nor I are originally from Chicago. When we moved here, we assumed that we'd get involved with the Jewish community, but we didn't think much about what that would look like. So we attended a few big events and sushi Shabbats and called it a day. Until the day I got a call and was asked to serve on a committee. Sure, I said. Our oldest was a baby and I was home with him at the time and thought some actual adult conversation sounded nice. Little did I know the passion I would grow to feel for the work. A few years ago, a friend asked me why I was so passionate about my work with JUF. In what must have seemed like a roundabout way, I told her the stories of times I'd felt excluded or awkward and shy and tentative, and she, knowing that my story eventually had a happy ending, replied, "If you, who are largely part of mainstream Jewish life, can feel like that, what must it feel like to people who feel so much more marginalized in our community?" What a powerful moment this was for me, and how right she was. Little did I know that this passion of including the excluded was shared by many others I would get to meet and work with through JUF. Indeed, my greatest pleasure has been learning how many lay leaders and staff are there for the same reason as I am, but the folks they strive to represent are a whole different group than who I've shown up for. And this is what makes our work together so very powerful. Because yes, commission meetings are the epitome of the saying, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, but what makes them so great is that we can all recognize the good place we are coming from. Every person in the room is there because they believe in the power of the work, that together we can make real, meaningful differences in ways big and small. I am so very grateful to my fellow lay leaders who have shown me what it means to work for the good of the whole community. This is how a community as diverse as ours ensures that there's something for everyone. Of course, None of this would be possible without the work of the amazing staff. Truly, our staff are unparalleled. The time and energy they commit to listening to representatives of the organizations we work with is immeasurable. And it's this relationship building that facilitates all of our work. These building blocks are what allows Chicago to be known as a center of innovation for Jewish life today. As a community, not only do we support the institutions that have served us so well for so long, but we also recognize how Jewish life has evolved, and we invest in new approaches. Thank you to my husband, Gary, and to our children, Ben, Henry, and Mira, and Lishana Tova.
Our second honoree is Emily Pevnick, currently the Director of National Expansion at Skills for Chicagoland's Future. She previously was Senior Account Executive at Resolute Consulting, Midwest State Director for APAC, and headed up Strategic Partnerships and Global Affairs for the Office of the Mayor under Rahm Emanuel. As JUF's Vice Chair of Government Affairs, Emily has demonstrated a passion for building bridges. When she served as a Vice Chair of the Jewish Community Relations Council, she hosted a JCRC Dinner and Dialogues event in her home to connect members of YLD to members of a young adult board in the Black community. When she served on the YLD board from 2014 to 2018, she was vocal regarding the importance of learning about current events, Israel, and the larger Chicago community. In 2018, Emily joined Young Women's City Council and was named as one of JUF's 36 under 36 in the same year. In 2019, she participated in the third cohort of the Jewish Leaders Institute, was involved in a post-JLI stewardship initiative for next-gen couples, and became a Jewish Women's Foundation trustee, quickly establishing herself as a valued new voice at the philanthropic table. In 2020, she served on JUF's nominating committee and as Young Women's City Council campaign chair. Over that last year, at the height of the pandemic, Emily chaired Tove's Nourish Our Neighborhood program. Emily has also served on the BGS Advisory Council since its inception. Outside of JUF, she is a CityPAC board member, former Technion Innovators board member, and founding board member of the Jewish Women International Chicago Young Women's Leadership Network.
When I first moved to Chicago, I was actively involved in the Jewish community and, at the same time, adamantly opposed to getting involved in JUF. I refused to go to the big event and wasn't interested in finding my besheret at the Blue and White Bar Night. At that time, I saw JUF through a very narrow prism and didn't see where I fit in. Now, I recognize that perhaps this isn't how you're supposed to start a speech for an organization you are accepting a leadership award for. But I wanted to start out by sharing my truth because I believe it is a story of an example of the power of JUF's engagement to transform people, especially young people who may not even be from Chicago, into lifelong leaders of the Chicago Jewish community. Over the past decade, my initial resistance to JUF morphed into a deep understanding, appreciation, and commitment to its work. Yes, JUF does serve as a social outlet for many young people and the young at heart. But this connection is a gift that I have since stopped taking for granted. Growing up in a smaller Jewish community in Louisville, Kentucky, my primary Jewish connections came from camp friends in other cities. I remember thinking as a kid that I hoped one day to live in a city with lots of Jewish options. Each time I say yes to JUF, I intentionally recommit to building and sustaining the vibrant Jewish life we have here. When COVID hit last year, I, like many others, felt completely helpless as we watched the needs grow each day. I had an overwhelming sense of urgency to help those who did not have their basic needs met. I immediately turned to JUF to ask how I could give. I knew JUF could assess the broader needs far better than any individual, and know where and how I could make the greatest impact. I responded to the TOVE emails highlighting community needs, but always feeling like I was never doing enough. When I was asked to chair the Nourish Our Neighborhood community-wide collection drives last year, I said yes every time. Instead of asking what could happen to me in this pandemic, I channeled our good friend Pastor Harris and asked what could happen through me. Together, we gathered over 1,200 volunteers who donated almost 3,500 kits of food, winter gear, toiletries, and school supplies to those in need across Chicago. As many of us got more involved in JUF's response to COVID, or anti-Semitism, racial inequities, and more this past year, we had a renewed sense of purpose and mission. There is an African phrase I recently learned called Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. It embraces the notion that humans cannot exist nor succeed in isolation. We painfully felt this concept this past year, and my hope is that as we move forward, we do not take this community for granted, but double down on our efforts to fuel it. I am because we are. Our Jewish community is because we are. Israel is because we are. Chicago is because we are. Thank you.
Congratulations, Hannah and Emily. We are so fortunate to have your leadership in our community. Our federation system constitutes one of the largest health and human service providers in the state of Illinois. In addition to the JUF annual campaign, we rely on over $400 million in annual government funding. We are grateful for our partnership with every level and every branch of government, including law enforcement. We'd like to welcome our new Consul General of Israel to the Midwest, Yinam Cohen. A big collective thank you to all those who have devoted your lives to public service. We also appreciate the partnership of our colleagues from affiliated and beneficiary agencies, trusts, and foundations, and refugee resettlement programs. We would also like to thank the United Way for its vital support of the humanitarian work of our Federation and our agencies. During the past year, we were pleased to collaborate with United Way to increase food access for those in need throughout Chicago, and we urge you to be generous to the United Way campaign. Finally, we'd like to acknowledge our government affairs and community relations partners. Thank you for your service and commitment to communal engagement.
Today, as we come together to amplify our collective strength to make the world a better place for everyone, our work has never been more urgent. This year, in particular, we have stepped up to help tens of thousands whose lives were turned upside down by the pandemic. We were able to do so thanks to the support of a deeply committed community and a strong JUF annual campaign, which fuels everything we do to serve people in need and connect people to Jewish life. It's our community's lifeblood. For the past year, the person who has taken on the task of leading that campaign has been Kim Schwachman. This is a demanding role under any circumstances, but this year it's demanded a whole new level of dedication. And Kim has risen to the challenge with intense determination and focus. Kim is tireless. She can and will talk to anyone on JUF's behalf, and she is so completely authentic that she truly connects with everyone she meets. She has enormous credibility. Kim believes so strongly in JUF's mission that she is fearless, and her passion is infectious. That's the secret to her success. She is an incredibly hardworking, purposeful, and committed leader. Today, we thank Kim. We pledge her our continuing support in these crucial last few months of the 21 campaign. and we honor her with the Shofar Award, our traditional expression of gratitude to the campaign chair. This is rooted in our age-old symbol of calling the Jewish people together. Kim has indeed brought us all together for good. We'd also like to recognize the remarkable individual who will follow Kim and pledge to him our continuing support. I'm pleased to introduce the General Chair of our 2022 Jewish United Fund campaign, Steve Miller. Steve is a deeply respected businessman and philanthropist, a truly down-to-earth mensch who uses humor to build relationships and get to know people. He is as dedicated and big-hearted as he is sharp and witty, an unbeatable combination. Steve, we have every confidence that the 2022 campaign will be a great success under your leadership. And thank you for taking on this critical responsibility for our community.
Our third Goldsmith Award honoree is Nora Bergman from CJE Senior Life. This past year has been particularly hard on Holocaust survivors for whom the isolation, restrictions, and threat of the pandemic were especially traumatic. As program manager for Holocaust Community Services, Nora delivered support to local survivors in creative and sensitive ways during this stressful time. Keeping clients' psychosocial needs at the forefront, she helped everyone adapt to virtual platforms, ensuring no gap in the services that 2,000 local survivors depend upon: financial aid, care management, counseling, and social support. Nora also helped develop a hybrid reopening plan that includes both in-person and virtual contact, ensuring flexible support to best meet the individual needs of local survivors going forward.
So taking care of these people who experienced atrocities that are hard to think about and imagine is very important. We obviously can't erase anything that they went through during the Holocaust, but being able to take care of them now as they're going through their older adulthood is very important. The pandemic, it was really interesting for me to sort of see the parallels between some of the traumas and experiences that survivors had and what was going on over the past year and a half. Things like at the beginning of the pandemic, food shortages and supply shortages could be reminiscent of when people didn't have enough to eat during the Holocaust. Things like government mandates and sort of this lack of control and autonomy, being told to wear a mask or being told not to go certain places, to stay inside. That feeling of confinement and feeling trapped could be very reminiscent of when people were in ghettos or in camps, and bring those sorts of memories out. Also just the separation from people and being separated from your loved ones and fearing that you might not see them again, and all of the illness and death around us could really trigger memories of the Holocaust and when people were separated from their family members and had no certainty about whether or not they were going to get to see them again. And we've done a lot of individual outreach. So our support groups, we've got 8 or 9 now, continued to meet after only a very brief break. They paused at the very beginning of the pandemic, and within a few weeks they'd resumed by either conference call or Zoom. And we did a lot of individual outreach, working with people one-on-one over the phone to teach them how to connect by Zoom. It's been really important for survivors to have that continuity and to be able to see people, even if it's through a screen. But we've also seen so much resilience, which I think is a primary characteristic of survivors in general, and strength, and getting phone calls from survivors, asking how we're doing, checking on us, making sure that we're doing okay, and just reminding us that we will get through it. And they've been through harder things before and hard things before, and persevered and shown all of that resilience. So I think it's been really special to see that and to take strength from our survivors and from our clients. So they're supporting us just as much as we are supporting them.
Thank you, Nora. Our final Goldsmith Award honoree is Leticia Cardozo, Assistant Director of Residential Supports for JCFS Chicago. Leticia is responsible for JCFS Chicago's community integrated living arrangement homes for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And she guided staff, residents, and their families through the pandemic with grace, energy, and bravery. When there was widespread fear and uncertainty, Leticia was a rock. She remained upbeat while swiftly incorporating emerging safety recommendations. She did everything in her power to ensure 24/7 staffing, including covering shifts herself. She arranged backyard visits to keep families in touch. When day programs closed and visitors were put on hold, Leticia set up structured in-home activities, plus regular Zoom visits to keep her residents connected to community.
When our governor instituted a shelter-in-place order, my hours of support increased by 100 hours a week. It was a daunting thought. My recommendation at that point was that we did not exit services. I felt folks needed to stay where they called home. JCFS was in support of that recommendation. The families expressed some relief and gratitude that we were recommending what was best for their loved ones, despite all of the anxiety around the unknowns. But I still needed to find coverage for 100 extra hours a week. That exact moment where I had about 30 people not hesitating to say, I'm coming in. I know that this is difficult. This might impact me and my family and how I do things at home. But folks need my support, and this is why I do what I do. Hardest part was telling families and their loved ones that a hug was not safe. We had to rely on alternative ways to connect. So we facilitated a lot of virtual calls, backyard visits, car parades. It was difficult. Oftentimes people with intellectual developmental disabilities go through a process when they're acquiring skills. There's desensitization, modeling, and repetition. We didn't have time for that. All of a sudden, masks were required. We didn't have time to get used to the strong smell of hand sanitizers or the expected physical distance. So that was challenging for that group. But with our team and community partners, social narratives were created overnight. People dropped off various masking styles for us to try it out. We assigned seating spaces in the home so people could practice social distance naturally in their own environment. They did it, but I'm just incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to work with this group of individuals, seeing them thrive and grow and be part of their community and experience so many new things on a daily basis is an amazing opportunity.
I'm so pleased to be here to honor my worthy friend, Andy Hochberg, who's receiving the prestigious Julius Rosenwald Memorial Award. In Pirkei Avot, one of our most treasured collections of rabbinic wisdom, it states, Rabbi Yossi used to say, he who honors the Torah is himself honored by humankind. And later in the same chapter, it states, Rabbi Shimon used to say, there are three crowns, the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of kingship. But the crown of a good name surpasses them all. Both Andy's character, who he is, as well as the way he has chosen to lead his life, exemplify both of these statements. He is a man who honors Torah in the very heart of what it means to be a Jew with every action he takes. Everyone who knows him knows that he is incredibly thoughtful, always making choices in life based on his moral compass and the values he wishes to live. He's committed to Torah study, to synagogue life, to Israel, to Jewish peoplehood, to Gemilut Chasadim, and to Tzedakah. And he's an amazing husband, father, and friend. It is his deep integrity, his abundant wisdom, and his devotion to Jewish life that have earned him the honor of this community. As Rabbi Shimon wrote, the crown of a good name is the highest honor. And because of what Andy has done and because of who he has achieved a superb name and therefore deserves the highest honor. Andy has constantly set the bar so high for Jewish leadership and as well for the level of menschlichkeit one should exhibit when representing our people. I feel blessed to know Andy and his entire wonderful family, and I am honored to be his rabbi. Therefore, it is we, the lucky members of the Chicago Jewish community, who say to Andy, Yasher Koach and Toda Rabah for all he has done. We wish Andy continued Hatzlacha, great success in all of his future endeavors, and I personally look forward to many more years of being his colleague and friend. Mazel Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi Schwab. The Julius Rosenwald Memorial Award is the highest honor the Jewish Federation bestows, each year honoring one stellar leader in our community who embodies the spirit and selflessness of the renowned philanthropist Julius Rosenwald. This year, we honor a man who lends new meaning to the tenet of Lador Vidor, from generation to generation. Andrew S. Hochberg. His is an extraordinary family legacy. When he assumed the helm of the JUF annual campaign in 2008, Andy became the first individual in JUF's history to succeed both his father Larry and his mother Barbara, of blessed memory, in heading the JUF annual campaign. 1 decade later, when he became board chair, he was the first in history to follow his mother in that role. But Andy has distinguished himself as a leader in his own right in numerous ways, setting just as extraordinary an example for his own 4 children as his parents did for him and his sister. The winner of JUF's Davis, Gidwitz, and Glasser Young Leadership Award in 1999, Andy has been active at JUF throughout his entire life. Activism that has touched on virtually every aspect of JUF's work. A great proponent of Jewish education, Andy assumed a leadership role in spearheading the enormously successful Jewish Day School Guarantee Trust Fund. An ardent Zionist, Andy served on what is now the Partnership Together Committee, brought his love for Israel to bear on his service on the Government Affairs Committee, and has gone on countless leadership missions to Israel. An astute and accomplished fundraiser, before Andy chaired the JUF annual campaign, he was campaign chair for the Young Leadership Board, and then served on the National Young Leadership Cabinet. He served as JUF Federation board chair at a critical moment in our community's history. It's possible that no other board chair has faced quite so many crises in a single 2-year term, and Andy led us through them all with wisdom and foresight. The horrific shooting at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue transpired just a few weeks after his term began. His leadership was pivotal in helping our community grieve and expanding JUF's multifaceted security program to include millions of dollars in matching grants for local Jewish institutions. He also presided over the search for JUF's first new chief executive in 40 years. Then, COVID-19 hit. Andy was a key architect of JUF's historic response, mobilizing resources to distribute $21.6 million in emergency grants community-wide effectively and efficiently. Andy's lifetime of intensive involvement poised him to guide our community through these challenging times in a way that no one else could. Andy, you have done your parents so very proud. It is my privilege to present you with our Federation's highest honor, the Julius Rosenwald Award.
Thank you, Pam and Rabbi Schwab. Thank you very much for this wonderful honor. I am proud to follow so many others that have come before, many of whom are watching today. You have been a great example to me. It's especially meaningful to me that I follow both my mother, Barbara, and father, Larry, in receiving the Rosenwald Award. My mother passed away in 1998 before receiving the award, which my sister Amy and I accepted on her behalf. At that annual meeting, she would have been almost exactly the same age I am today. I remember thinking to myself, maybe I'll be back here someday and follow in her footsteps. So, fast forward 23 years, and here we are, on a computer. But on a computer or on stage, it is a gift and an honor to be here today. I want to thank my wife, Lori, my children, my partners in Next Realty, and my extended family, without whose support I would not be able to do the charitable work I do, and who are leaders in their own right. And a shout out to the amazing professionals who have been there for me every step of the way. But in my few short minutes here, I'm not going to talk about gifts. I'm going to talk about rewards. Rewards to the Jewish community, to us personally, and our families. Like many of you, I found myself intrigued by the competition in the Olympic Games with the goal of personal success and rewards and representation of country. How about those 2 gold medals for Israel? The first gold since 2004, and more total medals than some countries much larger in size. We are aware of the many challenges facing our community today. Perhaps each area, anti-Semitism, Jewish education, care for the most vulnerable, is its own event to be mastered. As a recent past chairman of the Federation Board, and in my new volunteer role as chair of JF&A's Domestic Policy and Government Affairs Committee, I've come to better understand the complexity of these events. But rather than try and diagnose and identify concepts that others can explain, I'm going to suggest some strategies for success that parallel the recently exhibited athletic achievements. First, unity, or achdut. Even some call it achdus. It's kind of ironic that our word for togetherness is pronounced 2 different ways. Our community needs to come together like rowers on a rowing team, unlike the old joke about the Jewish rowing team where one person rows and everyone else gives orders. And then there's training. Everyone knows the commitment it takes to be successful in business, in school, or in athletics. Some say it takes 10,000 hours of practice to be an expert. Why would we think that we can achieve our desired results for Jewish education and understanding Israel and other endeavors in so much less time? It's a bit of a cliche, but we need to talk persistence. Athletes undergo peaks and valleys in their training and competition. Why would we expect success to be quick and easy? We must commit ourselves to objectives and to continue long-range planning, as we have done for millennia in times much more difficult than today. Finally, passion. It has been a very tough year. We have so much to be proud of and thankful for. Our passionate commitment has created a wonderful federation that is the envy of others, and a strong, prosperous state of Israel, an ability to control our future. We have enormous challenges ahead of us, but if we work together, put in energy and effort, are persistent, and remember the joy in our work, we can't lose. We are at a crossroads in our community, and we have a choice: mediocrity or gold medal. For me, this is a moment on the medal stand, and all of you are standing here with me. But I also look at it as the beginning of the next challenge. Won't you join me? Thank you from the bottom of my heart for this incredible honor. Shana Tova and Gemar Chatima Tova.
It's now my distinct pleasure to introduce our president, Lonnie Nazater, who has proven to be a singular leader for a unique moment in history. Lonnie took the helm of Federation 2 years ago, and just 8 months later, the pandemic hit. Under his leadership, Federation quickly mobilized the resources to navigate through this once-in-a-lifetime storm, and allocated $21.6 million in COVID-19 emergency relief funding, above and beyond our regular annual allocations. His adept oversight of Federation's response to the pandemic is emblematic of the energy and vision Lonnie brings to the organization. Communicating core values to guide Federation's work, he has led a strategic process with his senior staff to articulate a clear vision and priorities for Federation's role in the community, from engaging the next generation and securing Jewish continuity to fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, and fighting anti-Semitism. He'd like to share some of that vision with us now.
Thank you, Pam. What an extraordinary partner and leader you are. Our community thanks you for your time, passion, and commitment. And a much-deserved mazel tov to Andy Hochberg in receiving our community's highest honor, as Andy has served our community in so many ways over so many years with grace and humility. Any discussion of this past year must begin with the pandemic. Right now, it feels like we have been running an 18-month marathon, but JUF was built to respond in times of crisis, and together, we and our family of agencies have kept up a steady pace, meeting challenges unlike any of us have ever experienced. We must remember, this is a relay race as well as a marathon. When one of us hits the wall, we pass the baton to the next runner. That's the power of our collective system. Let's take a look.
On any ordinary day, JUF and our family of agencies are busy supporting our community. But the COVID-19 crisis brought on extraordinary challenges. JUF stepped up, delivering $21.6 million in emergency grants. Here are the stories of how these funds helped ordinary frontline workers make an extraordinary difference.
When we came forward to JUF and explained what the situation was, there was no hesitation. Whatever support we needed, whether it was protective equipment, whether it was dollars for the staffing, we needed extra staffing as people became ill with COVID. JUF was there no matter what we said we needed.
When people needed emergency assistance, JUF delivered it.
We saw a tremendous increased need in services this year. We know that the impact of the pandemic is medical, but beyond that, it impacts mental health, it impacts employment, it impacts financial need, all of which are core JCFS services. So with the partnership of JUF, we were able to increase our financial assistance support and shorten the amount of time.
I was just blown away with how professional everyone was, with the speed I was able to get the assistance. It was a week, and I had food in the refrigerator, I had my rent deposit, and that just doesn't happen. You guys held my hand until I was able to get back on my feet.
Организация «Русский центр Безра» помогала нам буквально с первого дня. Нам сообщали по телефону о своих программах, о том, что они могут нам оказать помощь по доставке продуктов домой. Такого внимания, как мне лично и моему мужу, мы в своей жизни ни от кого не получали.
When people were hungry, JUF fed them.
The needs of Ezra's clients changed drastically once the pandemic hit. Our clients are seniors, our clients are disabled, they're immunocompromised. They had to take the lockdown very seriously. Getting something as simple as food became really difficult. Ezra staff had to get really creative during the pandemic to get food out to clients. And we had volunteers that were delivering prepackaged foods. We gave out 4 times more food during this pandemic than we do in a regular year. And that's really only because we were able to get extra funding from the Federation.
When months of isolation and worry took a toll, JUF expanded mental health services.
In the last 15 months, JCFS has seen a tremendous influx of people who never needed to turn to us for mental health support in the past. They are facing growing anxiety, depression, isolation, fear. We were able to shift to telehealth and continue to provide mental health services online.
A big change was that patients could no longer have their loved ones with them when they were having surgery or having a baby or when they were dying. We gave a lot of thought to how do we make sure that we understand where our own caregivers are on that breaking point continuum.
We were all deeply impacted by this pandemic and the toll it's taken. There's so much loss that occurred that people are just now being able to really process it.
One of the largest patterns that we noticed was parents expressing a tremendous amount of anxiety and a tremendous amount of struggle trying to balance working and parenting in the same environment. A lot of the children were having separation anxiety.
Jay's providing us talking points of how to talk to our kids, what's age appropriate for them to hear. And the teachers here were fabulous. They were doing Zoom with the kids, and so the kids still got those moments of normalcy. They still got to do Shabbat with their friends.
Shabbat is here, Shabbat is here. I'm so glad that Shabbat is here.
When seniors and people with disabilities were isolated, JUF let them know they weren't alone.
Well, I was worried about him being isolated because I didn't want him to be bored, and they canceled all the activities here. A friend of mine sent me a link to the programs in Council for Jewish Elderly, and one of them was this artsy talk, and I know he loves art, and it allows you to engage and learn.
You know, they had different sculptures, and we can interact about our reaction to the different kinds of sculpture, and she would comment about it, so it was very entertaining. It's something I look forward to every Thursday.
When we needed to stop programming and they were in their homes, we were really nervous about how they were going to be not part of what they were used to doing every single day. So we made sure that our staff were FaceTiming them daily, that they were connecting with other peers that they were used to seeing every day, and we put programming virtually together so that every single day there were touch points and they were part of our family.
So I got on Zoom. I was a little nervous at first. Did the music therapy. I liked it. It made me feel more calm and have confidence. Catcher did a really big thing for me.
JUF was made for crises like these.
JUF and Sinai have been together for as long as Sinai's been in existence, right from the beginning, so 102 years.
So our relationship with JUF has been so integral to our ability to serve our clients during this pandemic, and they've really helped us live our name, right, which is Ezra, help in Hebrew, and through their help, we've been able to turn around and provide lots of help to our community.
I cannot say enough positive things about the strength of our relationship with JUF. It's a partnership, it's stability, it's mutual respect, it's community, and it's hard to imagine how we would have weathered the last 15 months without our partnership, and I really look forward to what the next phase is going to bring for us.
JUF will continue to meet extraordinary needs and look forward, with hope, to more ordinary days ahead.
Whether we can see it or not, the finish line is on the horizon, and we will keep putting one foot in front of the other until we reach it without faltering. I am so proud of and grateful for JUF's partnership with Jewish Chicago's agencies and organizations, schools and synagogues, and to our visionary funders and foundation partners. COVID compelled us to become true thought partners and forever strengthen our relationships. As a result, Chicago's Jewish ecosystem is strong and flourishing. We never skipped a beat. Our Jewish preschools and day schools and camps were open for business and operated safely when others could not, enabling our kids and families to thrive. I am thankful for JUF's amazing lay leaders and professional staff who also didn't skip a beat. Led by Campaign Chair Mark Spellman, They mobilized with grit and determination to raise the requisite funds to meet the needs during this tumultuous time, resulting in 0 reductions in JUF's FY21 allocations to over 140 organizations and initiatives. Together with the most generous and committed Jewish community in the world, we will face the future with that same resolve and resilience. To help shape the ways we go forward, JUF just completed the 2020-21 Chicago Jewish Population Study, research we conduct every decade to become better understand our community and its changing needs. We'll share more about the findings in the coming months. I'd like to highlight just a few now. First, Jewish Chicago is strong and growing. Our population today stands at nearly 320,000, an increase of 3% in the last 10 years. The diversity of our community is also growing. 9% of Jewish households include at least one person who identifies as LGBTQ, and 7% include at least one person of color. Nearly 1 in 5 Jewish households include someone with a disability or a chronic health issue. We are striving to make JUF more responsive to and reflective of these differences in every aspect of our work. We are deeply committed to engaging in meaningful conversations and significant initiatives in the inclusion space. As we have seen in the growing participation of Jews under 40, if our community invests with intention, we can move the needle. I'm proud to report that last year, 4 in 10 young Jews participated in a program sponsored by Jewish young adult engagement organizations, like our own Young Leadership Division, Hillel, BASE, and Moishe House. Part of Jewish Chicago's diversity is a growing number of interfaith families. Today, 1/3 of married and partnered adults are intermarried, up from 20% a decade ago. It is absolutely essential that JUF embraces these families and engages with them with a wide menu of opportunities to connect to Jewish life. We must be like Abraham and Sarah, whose tent was open on all 4 sides. No matter where a traveler was coming from, a warm welcome greeted them. I'd like to talk about viewing diversity through one more lens: political beliefs. JUF's tagline, Together for Good, stands as a promise to work together always, and always for a better world. In today's politically charged reality, Together for Good also challenges us to accept diverging points of view within our community. Just as Jewish values fuel our passion for the issues, we must ensure that Jewish values shape how we speak to and about each other. We must tamp down the toxic tone in our discourse and learn how to disagree without disdain and to debate without doubting another's integrity. We are commanded to behave with derech eretz, common decency, which has sadly become too uncommon. If intelligent, good-hearted people cannot disagree and still respect and even like one another, what does that say about the tensile strength of our community? This division of the world into pro or con, liberal or conservative, us and them, is not only heartbreaking, it just may be the greatest threat to Jewish survival today. Nothing empowers those who hate us more than seeing us divided. Let's ensure that JUF continues to be the place where Jews of all backgrounds can find a home, where individual politics are left at the door and we all focus on our core mission of helping the most vulnerable and engaging the Jewish community in new and exciting ways. When someone is hungry, it doesn't matter who they voted for, we feed them. When a young adult is looking for a sense of belonging, it doesn't matter how observant they are, we connect them to community. When Israel is under fire, it doesn't matter who the prime minister is, we send aid. That's exactly what we did last spring. When Hamas launched intensive rocket attacks against Israel, we swiftly advanced $1 million to meet the needs on the ground and allocate an additional $125,000 in emergency grants. As if the conflict with Hamas wasn't terrible enough, in its wake, a wave of anti-Jewish hate swept the globe, horribly illustrating that today there are no boundaries between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. The subsequent surge in attacks against Jews and Jewish institutions demanded that JUF double down on protecting our community and galvanizing people of all ages and all faiths to fight anti-Semitism. That began with the commitment to significantly grow our security team and deepening its capacity. In the coming months, JUF will do more to help Jewish facilities garner Homeland Security grants and to provide additional matching grants of our own for security improvements at local schools, synagogues, and other Jewish institutions. Security costs topped $5 million annually just for JUF's family of agencies, and the number will only increase as we expand our services to all Jewish institutions. We long for the day when we can instead devote those resources elsewhere. Until that day comes, JUF will do what is necessary to keep our communities safe. Effectively addressing security is just one way to combat the spike in anti-Semitism. Many in our community, particularly young people, don't fully understand anti-Semitism or how to effectively address it. In addition to equipping them with the resources, one of the best ways we can prepare Jewish tweens, teens, and college students to face anti-Semitism is to instill pride in their Jewish identity while teaching them the history of our people and our Jewish homeland in all its complexity. At the height of the pandemic, we doubled down to ensure that every single Jew felt connected to community, and we can't stop now. JUF's many initiatives to engage the next generation are building blocks that prepare them to advocate for Israel and for themselves as American Jews. We must ensure that love for Israel is part of the next generation's lived Jewish experience. The continuing strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship depends on it, and so does our sense of peoplehood. We must continue to grow Israel Now, the amazing 8th grade Israel trip that originated right here in Chicago and has already been adopted by 4 other communities. We must partner with synagogues, summer camps, and day schools to help teens develop a nuanced understanding of Israel's reality, sending them to college secure in their Jewish identities and knowledge. And yes, we must make additional inroads at Illinois colleges, where our Hillels and Israel Education Center support students in responding to BDS and anti-Semitism on campus. We are particularly dedicated to helping our state's flagship University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign take necessary steps to ensure a more safe and welcoming environment for Jewish students. We must never allow anti-Semitism to be normalized. And so, in the spring, JUF launched a Stop Anti-Semitism public awareness campaign across the city with surround strategy messaging from expressway billboards and digital signboards to full-page ads, TV commercial spots, and social media channels, urging people to come together and eliminate hate. The campaign was targeted to both Jewish and non-Jewish audiences because it is urgent that our interfaith partners and friends also speak out against anti-Jewish hatred. When you are silent, it hurts. When you speak up, it strengthens us. It is equally urgent that we in the Jewish community stand up to any and all forms of hate with the same fervor that we do when we speak out against anti-Semitism. Our tradition commands us to pursue justice, and people of goodwill must unite to care for our neighbors as ourselves. We are nearing the end of Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, a time of introspection and repentance, when we recommit to who we are as individuals and as a community. At JUF, we recommit to standing up to all forms of hate. We recommit to embracing our community's diversity and celebrating its complex and beautiful vitality. We recommit to our core mission of feeding the hungry while nurturing the spirits of those who hunger for community. And we recommit to engaging every single Jew in Jewish life and learning. Let us gather strength from one another and enter the new year with determination, optimism, and excitement. L'shana tova tikatevu, and may we all be inscribed in the book of life.
Thank you all for joining us. This concludes our program. This 121st annual meeting of the Jewish Federation of Chicago now stands adjourned.